So fine, the agenda for today is to learn how you work with Testng. Okay, so I'll make a new project over here, new Java project known as Testng tutorial. Now, what is Testng? How it helps us, right? What all it can do? Let us discuss that first before jumping over to Testng. Right. Look, what happens is that in the real-time project, okay, you build scripts, you build Selenium scripts, right? You build your scripts. I've told you earlier as well. So you build your test cases. Suppose these are your test cases, right? This is your first test case, this is your second test case, third test case, and the fourth test case. Now if you have to run these test cases, you have to run them in a certain order, one after another. Okay, you have to run these test cases in certain order, or you have to run them parallelly. Okay, these test cases will be made with the WebDriver API, with the WebDriver code. All right, but the thing is that these test cases will not generate any reports. Till now, we have not seen how to generate any reports. Moreover, if you have to read your data from some external file like XLS file, then these test cases will not read the data from Excel file. There will be no screenshots and all taken and all. Nothing will be there. Okay, right. And moreover, if you have to, integrate later on the whole thing with Jenkins and all, so again, that becomes a major task. So how do you do all these things? To do all these things, you use the centralized controller. Okay, this centralized controller is Testng. People also tend to use JUnit, or they also tend to use the BDD frameworks like Cucumber and all. So what these frameworks they do is that they read the data from the Excel file. They call the test cases in a certain order, one after another. Okay, and after calling the test cases, they help you to generate the reports with the screenshot and all, and they also help you to integrate everything with Jenkins, right? So you can generate good reports, you can read data, and you can, it's like a complete engine running. If you talk about Selenium, then Selenium is just in this blue box. Okay, you can write your test cases in Selenium, but all those supporting things and all you cannot do. For that, we use these unit testing frameworks. Okay, in this training, we will be talking about Testng because Testng is most widely used with Selenium. Most of the companies they use Testng. JUnit and BDD are also there. If you want to learn them, they are covered in the video tutorials, the pre-recorded sessions which we have. Okay, so right now what we'll do is we'll start off with Testng. The first thing is that you need to configure Testng in your Eclipse. Testng has to be installed or configured as a plugin inside Eclipse. To do that, you have to just go to Google, and on Google you need to type Testng Eclipse. Right. When you type this, you get a lot of options. Fine. You go to the first option which comes up, Testng Eclipse, and go to the link install the plugin. This is the link. You click on this, and what happens is that on the next page you'll get this link. Okay, you take this link, fine, and go to Eclipse, go to help, go to install new software, fine, and paste the link. Hit the enter button of the keyboard. Okay, and you will have this message over here pending. Fine, and in some time Testng will come up. You can simply install it after that. Okay, and it will get your Eclipse will also get restarted. If you want to check whether Eclipse is successfully, or sorry, Testng is successfully installed in Eclipse, you can go to Window, Show View, and you can go to Other, and under Java you will see Testng. Okay, if you see this, that means Testng is successfully configured. Okay, now in order to work with Testng, for what I'll do is that under the source folder I'll make a new package known as test cases. Fine. Inside this we'll make our test cases. Okay. For example, I'll make a very simple class over here known as send mail test. This test is supposed responsible to send an email. Right. In Testng, what happens is that we have got annotations. Okay. Annotations like @test. This is an annotation. Okay, say public void do login. This is a test annotation, and what you do is that you add the testng library in the project and import the test annotation. Right. So this testng will be added as a library in your project. Okay. And this @test annotation symbolizes that this function is my test case. Okay. Inside it, you can write the WebDriver code, which will work normally. Okay. And suppose I can also write over here login test. Fine. And I can run it. You can click on the run icon on the top and it will run. There is no main function in testng. There is nothing. This test annotation function will automatically be executed. You will see that it is printing login test over here, and it will print that total test cases which were executed were 1, failures were 0, and skips were 0. So it will give you a brief report as well what happened, and you will have the printing logs over here, and moreover you will get a section out here known as results of running the test. Okay, so this, if you click over here, you get a simple diagrammatic result that do login test case was executed and this is passing. So this is quite good, this is quite helpful, right? And it helps you to directly make the test cases. You don't have to worry about how to report a failure or how to present this kind of a brief report. Okay, everything comes up inbuilt, right? And moreover, if you refresh this project, if you click on the refresh, right click refresh, you get the test output folder out here. Okay, inside the test output folder you will see that these are the reports. These are the testng reports. Okay, these are the default reports. They get generated every time when you run the program. Okay, in this report you will have the file, the major file index.html. Okay, you right click on this file and you go to the properties, and you can copy the path of this file, open this file in the browser. You will have a brief report. These are the default testng reports. Okay, right, these are not very effective, not very good, not very effective reports, but yes, these are reports which are present by default. We don't use these reports. We'll generate better reports known as XSLT reports. We'll see how to generate them. Okay, XSLT reports, they look something like this. Okay, they look really nice. They really cool. So over here you have got all these texts and all, and each test case will have a good description. You can have the diagrammatic pie charts and all. So we'll see how to build this report as well. Right. So, but by default you get that report. Fine. So you can have a @test annotation with the function, and that function will be treated as a test case. You can have multiple functions like this, say @test public void send mail. This will say send an email, and I'll just print sending mail, and I can have another test case @test public void logout. Fine, and inside it I can print logging out. Right. So when you run this test case, you will see that it prints login test, logging out, sending emails. It's executed all the three tests, but the order is little weird. I was expecting that the tests should be executed from top to bottom. First login, then send mail, then log out. What has happened is that login is executed first, then logging out, and then sending email. Okay, don't think that they'll be executed from top to bottom. There is a predefined algorithm as per which the order is decided, right? But yes, you can order them through commands. You can prioritize your test cases. You can write over here that the priority of this test case is priority 1, and the priority of the next test case is 2, right? And the priority of the next test case is 3. You can prioritize the test cases. Fine. And out here when you run it, you see the output. Total test runs are 3, failures are 0. There were 3 test annotations, and login test, then sending email, and then logging out. Okay, right. Now that's fine. Okay, you can build test cases, you can build multiple test annotations, and all can execute. That is fine. Right. Apart from that, sometimes you have to report a failure in a test case. Okay, how do you do that? For that, we use assertions. Assertions in Testng help you to pass or fail the test case. Okay, so all you need to do in order to work with assertion is that you need to use this class known as assert. Assert is an inbuilt class in Testng. Okay, it helps you to validate stuff. Okay, what is testing? In testing, we have an actual value, you have some expected result, you have to compare the expected with the actual, and then it works. Right, so you move this mouse over assert and you will have the option to import assert org.testng.assert. Okay, you import it and you write assert dot and you will see a lot of functions. Make sure you are importing assert from Testng. Sometimes people they import it from JUnit and it creates a problem because JUnit is also having assertion. Right, so you write assert dot assert equals, that means that there are two values over here. You have to compare them. Say suppose I write over here ABC and ABC. So this was the actual value and this is the expected. Both of them will be compared. So when you run this test, nothing will happen. It will say total test runs are 3, failures are 0. In the results of running the test, you can see the sorry, you can see the diagrammatic representation. Fine, you can see the diagrammatic representation of the test cases: do, login, send, mail, and logout. And if you have to fail a test case, suppose I give a different value over here, both of them will not be equal. So when you run it, you will see that do login is failing. Okay, expected ABC but was found ABCX. So it's written over here. And in the results of running the test also, you will see that there will be one failure. Okay, so assertion can be used to compare actual and expected results. Right? Fine. So out here, right? Out here, we will be using assertions a lot. Okay, fine. Now, what we'll do is, hold on. Yeah, we will be using one more, not at the end, Sujata, anywhere in the test case, you can use assertions. We'll use one more type of assertion known as assert dot assert true. What does this do? Okay, assert dot assert true will have some condition over here. Okay, conditions like 4 greater than 3 with some message. This can be the error message. You write error message out here, 4 greater than 3. This can be the error message. So when you run it, it prints over here failures are 0. What happens is that assert true wants to make sure that this whatever criteria you have given over here, whatever condition you have given over here, okay, right, whatever conditions you have given, they should be evaluated to true. Assert true means out here the condition should true. 4 greater than 3 is true, then it's fine. But if I write 4 greater than 13, then it will be false and this assertion will be failing, and whatever error message you write over here will be thrown. Okay, right? So when you run this code, so out here you will have one failure. Do login and whatever error message you write over there will be thrown. Right. So out here, what is the use of this? Remember I had made a function is element present. So you can keep the function is element present and probably give the x path of the element out here. So if the element is not present, if this function returns you false, then you can throw whatever error message, say element is not found on the page, something like that. So you can use assertions over there as well. Okay, right. So these are the two assertion functions which you will be using a lot, right? And moreover, you will be seeing one thing, that if I put up assertion and if it fails, if I run this, if it fails, then login test is failing but send mail and logout are passing. Now this cannot be possible practically because three tests are linked to each other. Okay, right. So out here you need to make the dependency between the test cases. Although the general rule of automation is that, right, you should not have the dependencies between the test cases. Okay, right, you should prevent that. But at times this is not possible. Okay, so what you can do is that when it is not possible, you have to use this. Otherwise, you have to make like it all depends on the kind of scenario you have. Basically, I cannot just explain in one line what I mean to say right now, but yes. Okay, so in this case we can actually put up a dependency between the tests as well, right? What we can do is that we can keep a function, or we can keep a command known as depends on methods over here, that this function send mail is dependent on login test, suppose. So you can put up in the array over here, and similarly the logout also depends on methods login. Okay, right. So out here, fine, out here what you need to do is that you need to use this depends on methods, and you can make one method dependent on multiple methods as well. If I want to make logout dependent on send mail as well, I can put a comma and put the other method name as well. So when I run this now, what will happen is that in the results the other two tests will be skipped. Yellow sign means that they are skipped, and in the console you will see that total test runs are 3, failures are 1 and skips are 2. So you have skipped both the test cases. Fine. Okay, right. Now what you need to do is you need to hold on. You need to sometimes skip a test case deliberately. Okay, what happens is that sometimes you have got multiple test cases, and you just don't want to execute some of them. You just want to run this, then probably this one, and then in the end you don't want to execute these three tests, right? So how do you work with this kind of scenario where you want limited number of tests to be executed? Okay, to work with this, what we do is that we actually end up, hold on, we actually end up using this command, throw new skip exception inside the test which we want to skip, and you can give any reason over here, skipping because of xyz reason, right? And you move the mouse over skip exception, import it, put a semicolon in the end, and when you run this code, you will see that the first test, login test, skips, and in the message it is coming up skipping because of xyz reason. The next two test cases, they obviously skip because they were dependent on the login test. So at times you will be using this command, because when you are running 1000 test cases or 1500 test cases, you have to execute some of them. Sometimes you don't want to execute all of them, so use this skip exception command to skip the ones which you want to ignore and you don't want to run. Okay, so this is about basics of Testng, that you can prioritize your test cases, you can write multiple test cases, you can make them dependent on a single file, right? You can use assertions, you can use skip exception, right? Now, apart from that, there are other annotations in Testng as well. Okay, now suppose before logging in, I want to open the browser, and after logging out, I want to close the browser. No matter whether the test is failing or whatever happens, suppose the test fails in send mail only, I want to make sure that I have closed the browser, right? Then we have got annotations like @before test, right? I'll just make it public void I'll just print it over here, and @after test. So you have got these two annotations, and you can write over here public void after test, and you can print this, right? So when you run this code in before test annotation, right, it will print before test and after test will print after. So you'll see that before test is printed before running everything, then the login test runs and it skips the login test, everything happens, and in the end, okay, in the end you will see that after test, yeah, after test is mentioned over here. So after all the three tests are executed, after test runs. Let me do one thing, let me ignore this skip exception. You will actually understand it in a better way. I'll run it now and you will see that after test is executed in the end, before test is executed in the beginning, and between this all the three tests are executed. Fine, right? So I hope you understood my point. Fine. Now moving ahead, could you please repeat when skip exception? Okay, when do we use skip exception? When we don't want to run a test case. Okay, we want to skip it. Sometimes you have 100 test cases, you don't want to run all 100 of them, so that at that place you use skip exception. So you have got before test, after test, which can help you. Suppose you can open the browser in before test. You have database connection to be established. You can open over here, and into after test you can close the browser. So no matter what happens in the test cases, whether the test cases fail or pass, the browser will open and the browser will close for sure. Okay. Now sometimes you have to use these kind of annotations as well. I'll use over here after method public void after method. Okay, and you have got before method public void before method, right, and system.out.println before method and system.out.println after method. So when you run this code, you will see that it prints before method, after each and before and after each and every test case. Okay, so sometimes suppose you have to do something before and after each and every test case, you can use before method or after method. The location of these annotations, they don't matter. I can put after method annotation function in the end of the file as well. Don't think that it will execute in the end. These are predefined orders in which these annotations they work. So you don't have to worry that where in the file you are keeping them. Okay, they will execute as per a predefined order. Okay, right, and you use them. These are used. Whatever annotations I've told you till now. Okay, these are used for sure. Fine. Apart from that, right, we have got another annotation for managing data. Suppose I have a single test case and I want to run that test case multiple times. I want to parameter, this concept is known as parameterization. I want to parameterize the test. Suppose I have a simple test case over here known as a login test, and I want to execute this test case multiple times with different sets of data. Okay, how do you do that? That's also possible, right? For that, what we do is that we use a two-dimensional array. This two-dimensional array will have certain number of rows and it will have certain number of columns. Okay, there are rows, there are columns, and you have got data inside the cells, right? Number of rows in this two-dimensional array are equal to number of times you want to run the test case. If there are 4 rows, then you want to run the test case 4 times, and each cell of the test case will have the data. The number of columns represent the number of data types you have in the test case, for example username, password, mobile phone number or something. So in one row we keep the data for one iteration. Okay, we use this two-dimensional object array. The first cell of this array is 0, 0, then you can have 0, 1, and this one can be 1, 1, like that. Okay, so for example, we have a test case, say public void login test. I want to run this test case multiple times. Okay, right. So you import the test annotation. If you have to run this multiple times, you will have to use the data provider annotation. This data provider annotation means that this will provide the data to the test case. Okay, and it will help the test case to run multiple times. So if you have to run the test case multiple times, it's very easy. Note it down very carefully. The first thing is that you need to make a data provider annotation. Okay, you have to make it like this. Get data, I will name the function. So this is a two-dimensional object array. Okay, in this object array we can keep the data. You can declare the object array over here. Inside it, suppose I write 3 rows and 2 columns. Okay, the first bracket represents rows, the second bracket represents the columns. I'm having 3 rows, that means I want to run the test case 3 times. And I have got 2 columns, that means there are 2 data types in the test. For example, username and password. Not data types, but 2 types of data there. It's there. So you can fill up the first row over here. You can write over here data 0 0 equals to say user 1, right? Then data 0 1 is equal to say password 1, something like this. Okay, then you can fill up the second row. You fill up the second row 1 0 1 1 user 2 password 2, and then you fill up the third row. Okay, 2 0 2 1 user 3 password. So you have got 3 sets of data. First you want to run the test with this set of data, then you want to run the test with this set of data, and then after that you want to run the test with this set of data. So you will write over here return data. So what will happen is that this data provider is going to return the data to this test. You will run the test case 3 times. You have to link this test case to this data provider. Okay, the first step was that you have to make the data provider annotation and make the object array, decide number of rows, number of columns, and fill up the data array. Okay, number of rows means that number of times you want to run the test 3 times, and number of columns means the number of parameters you will be having. Okay, now in front of the test annotation you have to write over here that the data provider is get data. You have to link this test case with this data provider. You have to tell the test case that this is going to be my data provider. Okay, right, and right, and what you need to do is that you need to just a minute, my PC has hanged. Yeah, you need to uh, write over here string username comma string password. Yeah, right. Okay, so because the number of input parameters in the test case, right, have to be same as the number of columns. Okay, if you have got 2 columns, then there have to be 2 input parameters. If you have got 3 columns, there have to be 3 input parameters. So what will happen is that that's it, you don't need to do anything else. What will happen is that when you run this, Testng will come onto this test annotation. It will see that this is the data provider. It will go inside the data provider. It will see that there are 3 rows. So it will be ready to call the test case 3 times. First time it will call with this set of data. It will pass username into this and password into this. Second time username into this, password, and third time like this. Okay. So when you run this test, you will see that the test runs 3 times with 3 parameters. Although this is just the starting, this is just the starting, it will get complicated. right? So I hope you are getting my point. Anybody with any questions? Anyone with any questions? Right. Now, the next step. This is fine. Parameterizing. We'll look at how to actually, how to run these test cases in batch, how to actually read this data from the Excel file. Later on, we'll not be hard coding the data over here. We'll be reading the data from the Excel file, right? So what we'll do is that we will use the XLS reader object over here. We'll make it more complicated. Just don't worry, right? Now the next thing the next thing is that suppose this is my individual login test file, this is my send mail java file. I want to run them together. Okay, I want to run them one after the another. Then how do I run this? In that case, you have to use a file known as testng.xml. Okay, that file, hold on, just a minute. I'll take this file and paste it over here. This is an XML file in which you can keep all the test cases which you want to run. For example, the first test was send mail test. You can give any name over here, and over here you have to give the class name in which the test is lying. The class is lying in the package test cases dot. Make sure you write the correct name, send mail test. So you have to give it with a package name. This is the test cases package name followed by the class name. Okay, and you can mention all the test cases out here in this XML file, all the Java files basically having the tests, and all the Java files can be executed through this single file in a batch. The second test was login test. Over here the name doesn't matter, you can put up any name. Okay, it doesn't matter. Out here you have to give the fully qualified name with the package name login test cases dot login test. Okay, right. So when you run this, code, you see that total test runs are 6. So it executes all of them. Okay, it executes all of them. And it will also generate the default Testng reports and test output, which I had told you, which we will not be using. We'll be using better reports. I'll tell you when I cover the frameworks, right? I'll tell you how to make these these better reports, which are extend reports. Right now, this report, you cannot just go to any client with this report. Rather, you will actually like to build a report like this, which we'll be studying during the framework session. Right. So right now I want you to focus on these concepts of Testng. Whatever I have taught you will be more than enough to get started and also to build a project. Although Testng is very vast, I cannot just stop talking for 4 days if I talk about it. But whatever I have taught it is more than enough to build the framework. Okay. Right. So